A woman in a worn janitor's uniform stood at the edge of the general's office, the sterile smell of bleach clinging to her clothes. The general, a man whose medals glittered like a constellation on his chest, looked at her with a gaze that held nothing but disdain. "You're telling me you can't even get this one spot?" the general sneered, his voice a low growl of disappointment. The janitor's shoulders, though hunched from years of hard work, remained steady. Her hands, calloused and rough, gripped the handle of her mop with a quiet intensity. She didn't say a word, just stared at the gleaming, polished floor. A floor that hid secrets only she truly knew. The general leaned forward, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Do you even know who I am?" The air in the sterile white halls of the Pentagon carried the faint, metallic scent of disinfectant and the distant hum of 100 unseen servers. It was a smell Maria had known for 5 years, a scent that had replaced the burning earth of Afghanistan and the coppery tang of desert dust. She was a ghost in these halls, a silent figure pushing a cart full of cleaning supplies, her presence as unremarkable as the dust motes dancing in the fluorescent light. To the generals and the colonels, she was just a janitor. They didn't see the way her eyes, a faded blue like old denim, constantly scanned the shadows, assessing every exit, every potential threat. They didn't see the fine tremor in her hands when the automatic doors swished open, a phantom echo of a distant blast. To them, she was a nobody, a silent servant. They didn't see the scars on her knuckles, each one a memory of a sacrifice they would never understand. Maria's life was a carefully constructed lie. By day, she moved with the steady, methodical rhythm of a woman who scrubbed floors for a living. She polished brass plates until they shone like mirrors, her reflection a stranger's face, worn and tired. But by night, in the quiet solitude of her small apartment, the woman behind the uniform would return. She would sit in a worn armchair, the moonlight painting long shadows across her face, and her mind would travel back to a different kind of silence. The silence of the desert night. The silence before a shot. She remembered the name of every woman and man she had served with. She remembered the feel of a rifle stock against her cheek, the slow, steady rhythm of her own breathing as she waited. She had been a ghost then, too, a sniper known only by the call sign Wraith. She had saved 100 lives she would never meet, all from a distance, all in silence. Her mind replayed the faces of those she had lost, Sergeant Miller, whose laugh had been loud enough to shake a sandstorm, young Private Evans, who had dreamed of opening a coffee shop back home. They were her ghosts, and their memory was a weight she carried every day. She had come home, but part of her had never left that far-off land. Her new life was her penance. She had buried her medals in a lockbox and her skills deep in her soul. She believed she deserved to be invisible, to fade into the background. It was a quiet existence, punctuated by the mundane tasks of cleaning, a stark contrast to the life or death decisions she used to make in a single breath. The work was simple, the pay was enough, and the anonymity was a balm for her wounded spirit. But anonymity, like silence, can be a fragile thing. The disrespect started small, a casual comment here, a dismissive glance there. Officers would step over her freshly mopped floors without a second thought, leaving muddy footprints in their wake. A lieutenant, young and arrogant, once flicked a half-eaten sandwich onto the floor she had just cleaned, a smirk on his face as he watched Maria slowly bend to pick it up. Maria's face remained a blank slate, her eyes fixed on the task, but inside, a quiet storm was brewing. One humid afternoon, the air thick with tension, General Albright, a man known for his fiery temper, strode into the hallway. A delegation of foreign dignitaries was on its way, and a pristine appearance was a matter of national pride. But there, on the grand marble floor, was a dark stain. Albright's face turned a deep shade of crimson as he pointed a shaking finger at Maria. "This is a disgrace," he roared, his voice echoing through the silent halls. "What is wrong with you? Are you incompetent?" Maria stood perfectly still, her mop held loosely in her hands. She looked at the general, then at the stain. It was a small, insignificant thing, a blot on a surface that was, in every other way, flawless. But the general wasn't seeing a stain. He was seeing a target for his frustration. "You get this cleaned up now, or you're out of here," Albright hissed, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. The dignitaries were approaching, their footsteps a growing drumbeat of expectation. A young private, fresh out of training, watched from a distance, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and empathy. She had seen Maria around and had once watched her calmly talk a frightened new recruit through a panic attack, her voice a low, steady rumble of reassurance. She knew Maria wasn't just a janitor. As the general's face grew redder with impatience, Maria's gaze slowly rose from the floor to meet Albright's. Her eyes held no defiance, no anger, only a profound, almost bone-deep exhaustion. It was a look that said, "I have faced storms you can only imagine." The general didn't notice. He was too consumed by his own fury. Then, a sudden, powerful shift. The general's personal aide, a Colonel Harris, stepped forward. Harris, a man whose face was lined with the wisdom of a long career, looked at Maria, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He had seen that look before, in the eyes of women and men who had seen too much, done too much. "General, with all due respect," Harris began, his voice a calm counterpoint to Albright's rage, "that stain is not the janitor's fault. I spilled my coffee." The general froze. Harris, a highly respected officer, had just publicly contradicted him. The tension in the hallway became a physical weight. Albright looked from Harris to Maria, his brow furrowed in confusion. Harris's gaze held a quiet command, a silent message that went unseen by everyone but the general. Then, Harris did something remarkable. He walked over to Maria, picked up a small, worn photograph that had fallen from her cart, and handed it to her. The photo was faded, its edges soft with age. It showed a younger Maria, in full uniform, standing beside a group of soldiers, their faces young and full of life. One of them, a beaming young woman, had her arm around Maria's shoulder. General Albright's eyes, once full of fire, now grew wide with a slow, dawning horror. He looked at the photo, then at Maria, then back at the photo. The young woman with her arm around Maria's shoulder. That was his daughter. The daughter he had lost in a firefight years ago, a loss that had hollowed him out and left him with a bitterness he carried like a shield. He remembered the official report, the one that said his daughter's unit had been pinned down by enemy fire, saved only by a ghost-like figure who took out the snipers one by one from an impossibly long distance. The report had called the person Wraith. The general's face went pale. He had been yelling at the very woman who had saved his daughter's life, the woman who had been a hero to so many. He stood there, a man accustomed to giving orders, utterly speechless. Maria's hand, still clutching the mop handle, reached out and gently took the photograph. Her gaze was still quiet, but it held a new kind of power. She looked at the general, and in that moment, the weight of their shared loss, their shared history, hung in the air between them. A silence fell over the hallway. A silence so profound that you could hear the distant tick of a clock and the gentle hum of the building's ventilation system. The foreign dignitaries arrived, stopping short at the unexpected tableau. They saw a man in a general's uniform, his face stricken, and a woman in a janitor's uniform, her eyes holding the wisdom of 1,000 battles. The dignitaries looked at each other, then at the silent exchange, a silent show of respect passing between them. Without a word, General Albright took a step forward, his hand still trembling slightly. He reached out and, with a quiet solemnity, picked up the cleaning rag that had fallen from Maria's cart. He looked at Maria, his gaze filled with a humility he had not known in years. "Thank you," he said, his voice a low, rough whisper. It wasn't a thank you for cleaning the floor. It was a thank you for his daughter, for her sacrifice, for her silent burden. Maria simply gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. She had never sought a thank you. She had just sought to live with the ghosts she carried. She turned and, with a quiet dignity, began to clean the floor, her movements no longer hurried but imbued with a new sense of purpose. The general stood there for a long time, watching her. He didn't say another word, but his posture, once so rigid and full of pride, was now softened, humbled. The foreign dignitaries, seeing this, stood quietly, their expressions a mix of confusion and profound respect. They had no idea what they were witnessing, but they knew they were in the presence of something real, something more powerful than rank or uniform. The truth is, some of the most important battles are not fought with guns and glory, but with quiet courage and a clean mop. Some of the greatest heroes live not in headlines, but in the quiet dignity of their daily lives. They carry their honor not on their chests, but in their hearts. And sometimes, the only thing that separates a general from a janitor is a humble, quiet soul. True honor is not in the medals you wear, but in the wounds you carry in silence. We all pass by people every day who have fought unseen battles and carry invisible wounds. Maybe it's the quiet librarian, the grocery store clerk, or the woman who cleans the floors. You never know what battles they have fought and won for us. Thank you for watching this story about silent strength. We hope it inspired you. We'd love to hear what you think of this story. Let us know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us of the quiet heroes all around us.